this is probably one of the more common questions that we get, to be honest with you. Thinking about it from like what's going on standpoint, I think helps people understand this. So say you have a reconstruction, right? They took a piece of ligament, so they took a patellar tendon ligament or tendon, I'm sorry, and they put it into and they sutured it up, and now you have a patellar tendon that is now your ACL. The strength of that is actually significantly higher than its native ACL. So you're actually coming out of surgery, that is actually stronger than your actual native ACL is, right? And then what happens is your body has to say, hey, what is this? This is foreign. Do we want this? Do we not want this? And more often than not, it says, okay, we're gonna accept this as our own, but there has to be a process where the nerve supply and the blood supply and all those things have to reconnect to that tendon they just put in. So actually, when you start out super high strength, and then we know it has to accept it as its own. So it's almost like a dying phase. And then, right around that 6 or 12 week mark, you start to kind of build that strength back up. The opposite is true with the bear, right? You have a stump, you have this implant, you have something that has very low tensile strength. Now, there are secondary restraints naturally built in there to make it so the stress your legs are able to take is actually more. But just purely looking at it from the your body regrowing its ACL standpoint, it's not nearly as strong as a reconstruction. So being a little conservative early on so your body can naturally go through that healing process is important, right? We know by about 6 weeks that usually that you've created that bridge, right? So at that point, we can start to very sequentially really be more aggressive with loading strategy. And we know from some really great studies done, on the ACL and the stress and the strain of the ACL, we can be very thoughtful in how we're progressing it. We're going to choose low stress on the ACL and slowly build up the stress on the ACL, which is kind of somewhat foreign, I think, to some people to think about, like, why do you want to stress that? Well, you need to stress it because you stress it every single day. There's actually a tremendous amount of stress just walking on your leg versus doing some of those other rehab exercises, like a long arc quad or something like that, where you're kind of doing knee extensions, common, not to get off on a tangent, but that's a very common exercise still, unfortunately, in the PT community that we're like, oh, that one's taboo, don't do that. Well, guess what? Exercise is the only one that activates the quad and isolates the quad. And guess how much strain or stress is on that versus walking, right? It's actually less. So it's based on perspective and choosing the exercises in a thought-wise progression. So at the end of the day, I've started low stress and I've built up to high stress. So when they go back to their sport like soccer or lacrosse or whatever, they've stressed it enough in order to be successful.